Lebanon. I was just by chance ended up going into Lebanon for the 2006 Israeli assault on the Lebanese people. I just literally randomly, the day I landed, I went over to Syria. I flew into Damascus. I was going to spend a month basically just working with my interpreter from Iraq who had already had to flee to Damascus with his family. And we were going to just do some political stories in Syria and actually have a mellow time together. Go to the baths, go to Palmyra, this kind of thing. And the day I landed in Lebanon was the day that Hezbollah captured the 2 Israeli soldiers. So we woke up and watching Al Jazeera the next day, watching the Israelis bomb the hell out of Beirut International Airport, and I decided, well, looks like I'm going to go to Lebanon. So I called Robert Fisk and figured out the best way to go in and went up and came in through the north of the country and came down because they were bombing a little bit fewer vehicles in the north than they were going straight from Damascus to Beirut on that highway. So I managed to get down into Beirut and I started reporting, and generally what I can say is that, let me just tell you a few stories. One of the first things we started hearing about was the use of white phosphorus on civilians by the Israeli military. And another thing that was very, very common from literally the very beginning days of the war, I don't know if we should even call it a war, the assault, was that what the Israelis would do is they would pamphlet a village in South Lebanon and say, okay, we're coming in soon in half an hour to start attacking Hezbollah sites, so everyone here needs to leave. And then people would get in their cars with their families or buses, and they'd fly pillowcases or anything else they could find as a surrender flag out the window and start fleeing. And then Israeli helicopters and jets would come in and start rocketing all the vehicles. And then it was reported a little bit as though, this happened, this horrible thing, like it was a bad apple or a one-off thing. But this was policy. This is what they were doing all across southern Lebanon. This is one of the reasons why there were over 1,300 civilians killed in that assault. Like what David sung about, I actually, in 1996, there's a village called Qana, Q-A-N-A, in South Lebanon. There was a UN compound there in 1996 full of civilians that Israel bombed. They killed over 100 people. The 10-year anniversary of that happened to be during the 34-day Israeli military assault on Lebanon, and they bombed it on the anniversary. And they killed, it was over 36 women, children, and elderly that were in the village at that time. And the next day I went down to Qana, and I went to Qana. Because that was, them bombing it again caused a quote-unquote Israeli ceasefire, because the UN flipped out and actually raised their voice for a change. So there was a ceasefire. And so during the ceasefire, I'm in Qana, bombs are exploding in all these villages around, and Israeli jets are flying overhead during the ceasefire. And we're watching them pull bodies out of the rubble. But before I went up there, I interviewed some of the Red Crescent down there in Sur, the town on the coast nearest to Qana, and I took photos, for example, of one of their ambulances with the Red Cross right on the top, and a missile hole literally had gone right through the crosshairs of the Red Cross. And things like this, talking to these guys who said, yeah, we knew they bombed Qana, so we started going up the road to go up there to try to help. We were attacked twice. We had to turn around and go back. We lost this one ambulance. This guy over here got killed. This guy over here got wounded. So only on the third try, they basically bombed Qana and then monitored all the roads so that whenever emergency personnel would try to go in, they would start hitting the emergency personnel. So they actually didn't arrive there until it was like 6 hours later. So they bombed this huge structure. 36 people are buried under this rubble. And the Israelis made sure that they had to sit there for 6 hours before any emergency personnel could get there. So that I could go on with endless stories about this, but I can say that after having reported from Fallujah, which I would argue has been like the worst excesses of brutality that the US military was engaged in Iraq to date, that the Americans can hold nothing to what the Israelis do, to how they operate, to how calculating they are, to how insidious they are, that their policies there were just really off the charts, unbelievable. I mean, I was there when they bombed the UN outpost. There was a UN observation post, and literally this day we watched it happen down in southern Lebanon, nearby the border. Here's this UN outpost. They, of course, give all their coordinates to the Israelis, and here's these guys watching. And so the Israelis start doing some bombing runs nearby, and so the UN calls the Israelis and say, look, that was a little close. We're here. Remember, you have our coordinates. So a couple hours later, bang, even closer. They call again. We're here. That's getting even closer. Happens again, this time very close. They call, very alarmed this time, say, look, knock it off. We're right here. And then the next one, they take them out. They just bomb the UN outpost. So this, again, when you have a country that knows that no matter what they do, if it ever even goes to the UN, the US is going to veto anything that's going to condemn Israel. They're going to do whatever they want. And that's exactly what I saw in Lebanon. So at the end of the day, we have over 1,300 dead Lebanese civilians. I think the number of Israeli civilians killed was under 200. It was roughly about 100 or so Hezbollah fighters killed. Conversely, we had about 140 Israeli soldiers killed. So again, when the claims started being flown about, well, Hezbollah is just deliberately targeting civilians and they're terrorists, etc., I would say look at the hard numbers, and you would see that Hezbollah was far, far more accurate in targeting military targets as opposed to civilian targets, like 90% more accurate than the Israeli military was. And at the end result, what happened is Hezbollah is stronger now in Lebanon than they ever have been before. They effectively kept Israel from invading Lebanon whatsoever. They really showed the Arab world that the myth of the all-powerful Israeli military is just that, a myth. That I'd be really, really shocked to ever see another Israeli invasion of South Lebanon, because Robert Fisk put it best. When the ceasefire was declared, and we had about a 48-hour warning before the ceasefire was going to go into effect, the real one that actually ended the war, Israel said, they do what the Americans tried to do. It's like, okay, we're going to use this 48 hours and try to do mopping up. We're going to do mopping up exercises, meaning they're going to go in there and try to take out as many Hezbollah fighters as they can. And that's a period where they lost, I think it was nearly nearly 100 soldiers in 48 hours. And as Robert Fisk put it, it was Hezbollah that was doing the mopping up.